Okay.
It just walked in here right away, so she said, "Hold on," and set up the camera. Yeah. So, you know how we always are talking, and I always say like, man, the Israelites are just, or anybody in these older times are just so ungrateful because God used to actually show up and walk with them and be with them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm reading the story of Moses right now over the past couple days. This is probably my second day reading it, but I've been just reading a lot. This is the first thing I noticed today. I've read this multiple times, but this is Exodus 16. I started from the beginning of Exodus, by the way. And I'm on chapter 16, and this is chapter 16, verses 10. And it says, while Aaron was speaking to the whole Israelite community, they looked towards the desert, and there was the glory of the Lord appearing in a cloud. Now, the context is they're traveling, taking their time traveling to go to the Promised Land.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he's been appearing in a cloud and a pillar of a cloud this whole time, but I don't know what the Holy Spirit clicked in my head. But when he said they looked towards the desert and there was the glory of the Lord appearing in a cloud, I thought of, you ever looked up at the sky and just be like, man, the sky looks extraordinarily beautiful today.
Mm-hmm.
Like, wow, look at how it's shining. That's how the Lord was with them every single day.
Amazing.
And so I was like, oh, all those times that I had talked to Mom and I'm like, yeah, what the heck? God doesn't come down the same way. He's came and has been here the same way all this time.
He does not change his way.
Just in the sky, dwelling in the cloud. Because I imagine, what would that be like? Because they throughout this whole thing, he's been appearing in a cloud-like form. And it just came to my head, and when I thought of the imagination of how would that be. And literally there are days where the clouds just look normal and it's cool. You know, there's normal days where the sky looks good, but there's always a time when you're driving. I don't know if you guys can relate, but there's times when we're driving and you look off in the distance and you'll just see the sky just hitting the light going through a cloud and hitting the floor. And it's, the sky could be bright, but there's just a brighter light that kind of casts down and touches the sky, and you're like, over there, God is just shining down there. But that's how he shows up.
Yes, he does.
So he's been here this entire time.
All the time.
And so I was sitting there, I was like, wait. Remember that old question you thought I would never answer? Yeah. So I just wanted to...
Remember how we talked about boundaries and how God, because of sin, God has had to put boundaries. Because it separates us from him. And see, this would be more common or more visible if people would seek him and study him and rely on his Holy Spirit to reveal himself, because he's there. He's always there.
No, he's been there the entire time.
But when you seek him, he reveals himself to you. Because anyone can see that.
Right. Everybody's had that experience.
Anybody
had that experience.
Anybody can. But when the Holy Spirit reveals it to you, you be like,
you were in the sky.
He never goes anywhere. We do. Because of sin.
Right.
He's the same today, yesterday.
Yeah. And it flooded in my mind all the instances where I've seen God in the way that they describe seeing God. This is the second chapter of the Bible, so this is however many years ago.
I was reading something that said, I forgot the beginning of it, but the end of it said, he just reveals himself. And I'm going, he's not hidden. He just reveals himself to those who seek him. I'll seek him.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yep. That was the biggest thing that just came to me a couple minutes ago as I'm reading this. And then I just was, I'm at the part, they're grumbling again, aka complaining again, like how I was. So I'm definitely relating with the Israelites, because I just complained about God not showing up, and then literally that verse I showed you, after this verse they're still complaining after seeing God in the sky. So Israelites never stopped complaining for real.
You know what? That just tells you how much you have to be used to seeing God.
Yeah.
That you can still be complaining.
Yeah.
And still see Him at the same time. Yeah. If we saw God today in physical form, no one would be complaining. We would just have mouth open, drop wide,
eyes exploding.
We don't have time for no complaining.
Right.
There's probably gonna always be that one person after they come to themselves.
Yeah.
Well, God, let me tell you what.
Shut up.
Hush.
Immediately punched. Shut up. Don't
still be violent.
I would definitely be violent. Shut up.
But the fact that they don't have that tells you how commonly it was to see God back then.
Yeah. So honestly, it's still a blessing because their eyes were still opening to recognize God showed up in the cloud. Because mind you, this was me complaining over a span of time. We always probably had at least 3 conversations talk about like God used to show up like this and like that. So for Him to, like you said, reveal Himself in one way that He always showed Himself, like He walked with them through the cloud. If you go in Exodus and read this for yourself, how many times He's describing He was guiding them through a pillar of a cloud. He said, I don't know what a pillar of a cloud really looks like. I don't know if that's a tornado or not, or whatever, but He was still there in a cloud form. So, yeah, they recognized Him. They know, like, His individual forms.
Him from any other cloud. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I'm just learning the first cloud. Yeah, but they knew every cloud and it was still complaining. So that just shows you how, also, sin is just inevitable for our creation. Because they recognize God no matter what, and still you can see them complaining a verse later. Like literally after I read that verse, the Lord said to Moses, I have heard the grumbling of the Israelites. They didn't stop complaining after they seen Him in the sky. It was just like, oh God, there you are. So anyway, like you said, some people will still be like, that was cool, but God, we hungry. And
why you bring us out here and then don't feed us? We could have just stayed in Egypt where they was feeding us and stuff.
That's exactly
beating us, yes, but
they said they would have rather died by the hand, the Lord's hand. They didn't say Egypt. I said, okay, y'all are pushing it. The way that He killed them, y'all would not have wanted to be. Don't do that. You could have at least said like,
you the one been crying out, please come save us
for 430 years straight. Don't say you would rather die. Okay, we could have said anything, but the Lord's hand is different.
We've been crying out, God, we need help, we need help, we need help. But we want it the way we want it.
Yeah.
When He come and do it the way He's gonna do it, we're not happy with that. You can't tell God how to do it. You're the one asking.
And when you're in turmoil,
when He comes,
you actually don't care. It's so funny. In the midst of your turmoil, you actually don't care how you're going to be saved until you start getting saved. Then you're like, we're finally walking out. Now God send the chariots and stuff. But when you're getting beaten, you ask the desires of at your lowest, you ask what you need. Lord, help me. You didn't say, Lord, help me by saving me with the chariots and sending us meat and all these things. When you take us to the promised land, also do that. Like, no, I don't got time for that. Help me.
Help.
We didn't ask Him in specifics.
No.
We asked Him for what we needed.
So you can measure your real character of yourself once you have been saved. Mm-hmm. What do you do after? Some people don't even go back and say thank you.
Yeah.
Others just have.
Thank you yet. Oh, they did worship and had a festival.
And some have even more demands. And some just go back to their own sin. Yeah. And then there are some that are grateful and thankful and get the blessing.
Yeah.
It's just so many, we as humans, so many things.
Yeah.
I was just watching a video and she was talking about how things we get misconstrued in the Bible, thinking that if we have peace about it, then it must be God, and things we don't have peace about it, how it can't be God. And that's not true.
Right.
Because you look at Jesus going to the cross, he did not have peace about it.
Yeah.
Okay, there was a lot of turmoil.
Way to get it done.
Had a lot of adults.
I know. I agree.
Still questioning God while on the cross. Mm-hmm. Okay, so it made me think about that. How how we misunderstand God, or the way she put it, we're just being led by our emotions and our feelings, and we don't want to do that. And I say, girl, you're right. I don't want to, look at this struggle that I'm having inside of me as it can't be God. Because the struggle creates character. And it creates that dependency on God, building a foundation where we go to Him, and only Him. Not our feelings, not our emotions, not our thoughts. But how even in that, it's so deceiving to come up with your own resolution about who God is and how He operates.
And He warns about that. I mean, I think that's somewhere in Proverbs. Not there yet.
Wisdom, knowledge. Yeah.
But, leaning onto your own understanding of things.
Absolutely.
That's a part of it. It's not just making your own decisions, making your own plans or ambitions. Even if you are following in the will of God, but you're interpreting it in your own way. Imagine Jesus interpreted in His own understanding. Not saying that He's not perfect, but Him being an embodiment in the body of sin, but being the perfect person.
Right.
Imagine if we just find the story of Jesus like, you know what? You don't need my help through the cross.
Yeah.
I just need to keep doing miracles until you guys kill me, and then we're good. And it wouldn't work. And then we'd need another Jesus to come by and down and
we
do it the
still,
right way, right?
No matter what, try to control it. We cannot let go of control. We try to figure out. He says His ways is higher than our ways. Let me think about what's higher than my thoughts.
Doing it anyway without trying to avoid it. Do it in the way you were told.
Crazy.
I think even the world has phrases for that. Like, when you're uncomfortable, that's when you should do it the most. You know what I'm saying? Like, or a devotional I'm reading right now, it says, do it afraid. And right now, I'm struggling with fear and having an actual fear of, other things that are lower than God being able to overtake my life. And so God is kind of ending the chapter, because this was probably a 3-day process, but He's ending the chapter with me kind of just with this devotion. The first, just the phrase itself, doing it afraid, help me alone. Even if you're afraid, the emotions, like you said, the emotions are never the issue with being a human. Jesus felt emotions. It's the action behind your emotions that you do. Like, do you give into your rage? Like, God, Jesus got angry, but did He get rageful and start killing people and start, like, or when he felt sad and depressed and was literally sweating blood because he was stressed out, which is an emotion. You know what I'm saying? Did he just quit and not go on the cross? Run away and hide because he didn't want to go on the cross? No. And so, like, there's nothing wrong with feeling the emotions because God gave those emotions, but the action behind the emotions that you do. And so you can... Or
being led by them.
Yeah, being led by them more so is a better way to say it. So, like, you can... I won't say you can feel fear, because no matter what, God didn't give the spirit of fear, but you can be
fear
courageous.
Is an emotion. When He said the spirit of fear, it is literally saying being led by fear.
Okay.
That's what that means. It doesn't say not that you won't have fear. Fear is a natural emotion that is given to us. Fear corrects. Fear warns. Fear, yeah. If you touch the stove and you don't have any fear, you'll burn your hand. That don't make any sense. Not to have it.
You're gonna be fearful for touching the...
It corrects. It lets you know, don't do that.
Right.
But when when people get to where they have an unhealthy relationship with fear, that's a spirit that makes you
stops you from doing things.
Yeah, it
starts you from doing things.
Yes, anything that keeps you from having a life and having more abundantly is unhealthy. if it interferes with you living the life that God has for you, then no, it's very unhealthy.
Right. So the biggest thing I was learning from that devotion is just like the phrase is doing it afraid, and having, instead of asking God to take away your fear, ask God to give you courage. Because this is a funny example.
He says it so many times in the Bible, be courageous.
Right. And so funny that when I wrote that today in my journal, because this is a today thing, I thought of, I'm a 90s baby, as you know, of course, when I'm talking to them. So you remember Courage the Cowardly Dog? That was the example that popped in my head, where I thought, I didn't realize it until, I was reading my word. Courage finished everything. He saved everybody's life. He brought his family back to normal, but he was scared doing it every single time. That boy would be running around, but after he gets scared and Muriel would get taken or somebody get taken, he'll still be scared going to save her and still bring her back, safely. Mm-hmm. But through the whole episode, he'd be scared out of his mind, but he was still courageous enough to do it afraid.
Right.
And so I thought that was a cool example in my head. And I was like, dang, I didn't realize it. His name was, I never cared about what his name meant, but Courage the Cowardly Dog was the embodiment of doing something afraid. Mm-hmm. And his name is Courage because he still had the courage to do it in the midst of being afraid of something or having fear. I was like, wow, that's crazy. That's a different way to look at that show, because that show was definitely a little scary. But, I mean, for a kid, it's a little scary. But, like, that, that's a cool analogy that popped in my head, where I was like, wow, that is exactly the example of doing it. So, like, wherever God tells you to go, if you're fearful, it's like when God tells you the simple things, like, go pray for that person. You have a fear of rejection, so you never do it, and then you disobey God and stop somebody else's blessing because you were afraid of a rejection that wouldn't have been there.
Yeah.
Because he told you to do it.
That's the spirit of fear.
Right. So. Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. Bye, guys.